the Center for the Study and Teaching of Writing at The Ohio State University. This is Writers Talk. I'm Doug Dangler. Hope Anita Smith's first book, The Way a Door Closes, won several awards, including the Coretta Scott King John Steptoe New Talent Award and the Judy Lopez Award from the Women's National Book Association. The sequel, Keeping the Night Watch, won the Coretta Scott King Honor Award. She wrote and illustrated her most recent book, Mother Poems, and works with music, art, and photography in addition to teaching workshops to aspiring writers of all ages. She is a writer in residence at the Thurber House this summer. Welcome to Writers Talk.
Thank you.
Well, you've worn many hats throughout your creative career. You've been a storyteller, a teacher, a photographer, an artist, and a singer. How do you bring all of these dynamic artistic backgrounds into your writing?
Well, all of them have to do with words, and I love words, and so that's how they all get incorporated together. I started out doing storytelling at a bookstore in Los Angeles, Children's Book World, and from there I kind of branched out. My writing career as far as being published didn't come until years later, and I was taking classes and attending writing workshops and sent my work off to a couple of houses, and that's how it began. So
were you a paid storyteller, or you were just telling it in the bookstore and eventually they paid you to keep you there?
They paid me from the beginning, and it all started because I was a nanny, and I had taken my charge to a storytelling at a bookstore, and the woman there was telling a story about seals that were being killed for their pelts, and she had made up a song about it, and I was appalled. And I went to my local bookstore and got on my soapbox and complained about how this shouldn't be so, and they asked me if I'd like to come and do a storytelling. They had Leo and Diane Dillon coming, and that was my first official storytelling gig.
Okay. So no other stories about seals being killed for their pelts in your books?
No,
okay.
Never.
Right. So that rules out like the Bambi fathers?
Yes, yeah, all gone, all gone.
No, okay.
Just good, clean, wholesome fun,
happy,
and kids, yes,
okay,
getting to laugh and
enjoyable.
sing and not having to worry about animals that are suffering and dying. Yes, exactly.
We'll wait for junior high for that.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Do you find it difficult to balance your creative outlets, or do they work towards a more complete work of art? How does that work for you?
I really find that they do work towards a more complete. I have a lot of interests, and I find ways to incorporate all the things that I enjoy doing into whatever I'm working on, so that I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. When I go to schools and speak, storytelling is often a very big part of what I do. When writers are asked to come into schools or to go to events at a library or a bookstore, 9 times out of 10 your audience is going to be very young. My book is for a much older audience. So if I had nothing else, I'd be stuck kind of reading my work, hoping that a few parents were listening, and I would lose the child audience right away. But because I can throw in a song, or I can tell a story and get them to participate with me, and just talk a little bit about how I've published a book and give them just an overall view in a very simplistic manner so that they can understand, I get to keep everyone. And it gets to be an enjoyable experience for them all.
How did that work out for Keeping the Night Watch? Tell me how all of this came together for the sequel to your first book. Did you do did you think of the presentation of it in terms of a lot of songs? How did that get written?
No, the first book, the thing that runs through it is there's a grandmother, and a lot of lines refer to things like she's a rock, that's planted by the water, and I shall not be moved, which were Negro spirituals, and my grandmother always sang hymns and things around the house, and so that was kind of a thread that ran through the first book, and that thread continued on to the second.
Okay. Your books are written and illustrated for children and young adults. How do you approach your work differently when you are writing for a younger audience than, say, if you're writing for an older audience?
You know, I let the characters kind of dictate that. I don't really think in terms of writing for a particular age group. I tell the stories that the characters bring to me. Okay. And after that, we figure out where, publishers actually figure out where that story should be in terms of age. And a lot of times it's kind of inaccurate, only because there's some very precocious children who can read things that are much older and vice versa. And there's some children who are older that just can't handle some of the subject matters that are brought up. So my books are geared for 8 to 12, and I really kind of think of them as being for 10 up through 99,
Okay.
because adults relate to them as well as children do.
Okay. What kind of universal issues then are you dealing with that you think that people can identify with when you're writing?
Well, in the first two books, we were dealing with broken home fathers who are not a part of the family for a short period of time or a long period of time. Older children taking on responsibilities that their parent once had, feeling like they need to help their mother out or take care of their siblings, and kind of letting go of some of their youth to make that happen. And at the end, I hopefully gave a little bit of hope in The Father Returns at the end of my first book. And then the second book deals with him trying to regain the trust and respect of his family. And I, of course, when I was writing it, had no idea how it was all going to come out. But the one thing that I did know, however the situation resolved itself, their family was forever changed. They could be a family again, but it would never be exactly like it was.
Okay. Now, did your childhood in Akron, Ohio, your connection to Ohio, right, affect the characters and situations that appear in your novels?
Only in that my grandmother lived in Ohio until she passed away, and the grandmother in my book is based on my grandmother. And so that thread of Ohio of my connection to Ohio ran through her in my books.
Okay. But nobody else in your family plays a part in it? It's not a autobiography?
It is not, no. Okay. I tell students when I go into the classroom, if you've ever seen the movie The Sixth Sense, the little boy says, "I see dead people." And I don't see dead people, but I hear characters. And characters come and they tell me their story, and my job is just to be the person who writes it down. I document it.
I think on your website you phrase it as they come to you and demand that their stories be told.
Yes. Whether I want to tell it, there are a couple waiting right over here who are waiting for their stories to be told.
Are you going to pan to the side to show that? Because there is just a group of people over here. It's kind of scary, really. But quiet over there. What other artists or writers have influenced your work? Who do you think of when you're writing? Maybe.
I did a lot of oratorical readings when I was younger. And of course, very first and foremost would be James Weldon Johnson, Nikki Giovanni, Edna St. Vincent Millay, a lot of poets. And first and foremost would probably be Maya Angelou, who I went to see perform at Redlands University years ago. And she came out on the stage and she started reciting a poem by County Cullen. And I remember I sat and I couldn't even close my mouth. And I said, I want to do what she's doing. I want to make that connection with my audience.
Okay. Do you feel that connection when you're reading to it? Have you been able to do that?
I do. I really do. My goal this year is to do, even if it's just in a 99-seat theater, an evening of poetry with Hope Anita Smith. And that's my beginning of kind of following in Maya's footsteps.
I like how you've got a very specific number. 99,
well,
at least 99.
Yes, yes.
If it's a 100-seat theater, that's better.
That's right.
But no
that's
98-seat theaters.
That's right.
Nobody's standing in the aisle.
A 99-seat theater, yes.
Everybody has goals.
That's right.
What other genres in particular shape the kind of work that you do? Do you feel, we've already talked about the presence of song and things like that. Is there dance? Do you think of it as a performance when you do it?
I do think of it as a performance. I have absolutely no rhythm at all, so dance is not a part of what I do.
But there's a rhythm to the words.
Definitely, there's. I tell kids it's not just poetry that has a rhythm. I think all writing has a rhythm, and that's why when I speak to them and I say, if you want to be a writer, you need to be a reader, because you learn to hear that rhythm as you're reading. I mean, that's the thing I think that spurs us on to reading, turning the page. That music that we hear through the words on the page.